What's going on, everybody? This is Greg Fowler coming at you live with another episode of Real Estate Titans. I'm super excited for this one. We got our very special guest and feature titan for today, Andrew Clinkscale. Andrew, thanks so much for taking the time. Honored to have you on the show.
Greg, no, I appreciate it. As soon as you reached out, I knew this was something I wanted to do. So thank you for asking. Happy to be here.
Yeah, no, love it. And I can't wait to just dive into the data. I want to give everybody, if you're a first timer to the show, I mean, this is really about understanding and learning from the best of the best in the business, from realtors, lenders, builders, developers, residential or commercial, really gathering insight, inspiration, what really drives and motivates these top producers above and beyond everybody else. And again, what I'd like to consider a real estate titan. So let's just jump in, Andrew. I mean, there's so many levels that I want to just tackle, but I guess let's just start with the first question is telling everybody a little bit about yourself.
Oh, wow. Well, I've lived a lot of life. So, born in Nuremberg, Germany, Army brat. So German was my first language. Moved to the States. I was raised in the Midwest by a mixture of my mother and grandparents. So Milwaukee, then St. Louis. Right around 14 or 15, I ended up in the foster care system in St. Louis. So I spent 14 through 17 and a half in a boys' home. Emancipated myself at 17 and have not looked back. Like once I turned 17, I got into the arts, started writing, acting, singing, wanted to do all those things. Ended up moving to New York, got into school in New York, found a big job in LA, came to LA, was doing really well. Then the bottom kind of fell out of acting. So I was like, oh my God, what do I do in order to stay indoors and continue to eat? So I started playing poker. I played poker full time for 6 years. And then one day at the poker table, this older gentleman said, he asked me whether I had any experience in sales. And I told him, well, no, just been acting and stuff like that. He said, you should really get into real estate. You have a gift of gab. You're great with people. I was like, okay, like I'll give it a shot.
Right.
Got my real estate license and realized that, 70% of my friends were all people who were in the industry or high net worth individuals who played poker. Obviously, I was playing at a much higher tick than I should have been playing at. And a lot of them bought houses from me. And so, from there, the TV show Love and Listings called and said, hey, I heard you were a celebrity real estate agent. And I was like, no, I just sell to my friends. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we want you on the show. And the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, that's crazy all the way through and through. I mean, from the beginning of your life, transitioning and going through different phases and stages. I mean, that's incredible. Yeah. And I think that speaks a lot of volumes to a lot of other professionals, whether they're new or seasoned, that it's not one of those things that you just think about from the very young age. I'm going to be a real estate professional someday. I mean, it's in transition and going through, right? I mean.
Well, yeah. Well, some people, like if you watch the show, there are two individuals on our show who knew at 18, right out of high school, that's what they wanted to do. And I think they're super fortunate. I was not so fortunate. I wanted to do everything.
Okay.
and so there are different paths to getting there. But I think once you find it and you realize that it's not the easier path, I think a lot of people get into real estate because they think it's easier. You don't have to go to a 4-year school. Mm-hmm. You kind of can set your own hours, things like that. And those people either have to learn the hard way that it's not, or they end up kind of burning out. But I think if you get into it for the right reasons, whether you're 18 or 38, like you'll be successful.
I love that. And that's huge advice right off the bat. I think that a lot of people are intrigued to, and you had mentioned VH1 and the show specifically. So, I mean, I want to dive a little bit into that. No trade secrets or anything, but what was that process like at the very beginning, and how has it changed your career or your life in a positive or maybe even a negative so far?
Sure. Well, being an actor first, we always had such a negative connotation, a negative outlook on reality TV.
Sure.
So when I got the call, my first answer was no. I was like, no.
Okay.
I had no desire to do any reality TV. I didn't know the production company. We hadn't gotten picked up by a network, so at that point it was just a production company making the show, and they were going to shop it to different networks.
Interesting.
So I told them no, thank you. And hung up. And then they called me back and they said, hey, you should probably look us up. We've won a lot of Emmys. We've done, Housewives and Married to Medicine and $1 Million Listing and all these things.
Yeah.
And I looked them up, did some research, and I ended up calling Ryan Serhan, who also works for my company, Nest Seekers. He works out of New York, and got in touch with him and was like, hey, I have this opportunity. What do you think? And, not in these words, but he told me very clearly, Andrew, do the show. Wow. He was like, whatever, premonitions you might be having or like boogeymen that might be floating around in your mind, don't listen to them. Do the show. It'll be great for you in the long run. Wow. And so I called him back and I said, hey, about that hanging up earlier, I'm sorry. I apologize for hanging up to you. If you still want me, I'd love to come in and screen test. So I did. And it's great. I mean, it's interesting. It's not the way I thought I'd end up on TV, which is very interesting. But it's also very, it's eye-opening. You learn a lot about yourself. You see yourself from different angles. You see how you handle situations that maybe might not come up in everyday life. And you learn how other people actually see you, because now you end up being a guest in your own life. So like instead of being the star, you're like the guest, and you get to sit back and say, wow, if I could have done that different, I'd have changed that, or I'm glad I did this way, and here's how I handle customers, and maybe I want to change that. So you get a very unusual look at yourself, which can be very healthy.
Right. And that whole background is just incredible. The fact that your first impression was no, and reaching out to your peers, and you'd mentioned Ryan, and true professional in the field as well, and it's always great to be able to have reflection. And so after doing it, I mean, how have things changed at all? I mean, have they, or are you just kind of business as usual?
Well, both, right? Business as usual. I think I've always done large deals. So I don't know that it's only been season 1. So I don't know that the amount of deals that I'm doing have gotten bigger, because I've been doing deals pretty consistent. I've been very fortunate, but my team has grown. So I always wanted to start a team. When the show came out, I started the Clinkscale group. And since, I guess, maybe the first week the show aired to now, I've added 6 members on my team here in Los Angeles. Wow. And we started a Clinkscale group San Francisco division as well. So
fantastic.
That is exploding and kind of growing, and those opportunities to mentor and speak publicly and, write, all these other things are happening while the real estate's staying strong. So.
Okay. And I love that. And I want to shift gears into it, because we could talk about production in this all day long. And I know that everybody out there is freaking out on this data, but I want to go into the real need of this, particularly for everybody out there to get to know you deeper. It's questions thrown around quite a bit, but what is your why, Andrew? And I base it down this way. What motivates you? What drives you every day to get out of bed, to do what you do to the level you do it at?
Yeah, I think it's fear. Right? Like I think it's fear. I think it's I've been homeless more than once. I've been I've gotten arrested. I've been at the lowest of lows, and I know how that feels, and it's the thought of going back is very scary. Especially now that I have a wife, we're trying to start a family. So now it's not just me, she's attached herself to me, you know what I mean? And so making sure that we're always okay is, there's no better reason than that. And then you can drill down to the meta. I think a lot of my past foster care, being homeless, things like that it's given me a different appreciation for home. Wow. The concept, the construct of home. Yeah. So I really enjoy putting people in their first house. I really enjoy helping people find that home, maybe if they didn't think they could afford one, or maybe if they thought they would never own one, or if they knew they would always own one, but they wanted to kind of upgrade. And I love the idea of ushering someone into a place that they can now call home, because I spent most of my life without that.
Right.
I'm just now starting to get that kind of nailed down in an immovable space in my life. Okay. And so, being a catalyst to that for other people is just, you can't beat it.
And I love those answers and responses. I know everybody's really resonating with that, because it's, first of all, you're talking about, your past and really moving forward and never feeling certain pains or struggles that are going on. So that is powerful motivation, but really talking about your family and your future family. But then bigger than ourselves is your clients. And that's so much driving force and passion. And you can feel it and see it with this energy already. So, I mean, this is great. No wonder why you're doing what you're doing, my friend. This is great stuff. But I love those particular lead-ins, and to dive a little deeper, I want to go into the business portion of this. And a lot of the viewers of this particular series and show, they want to know what the Titans are doing or have done to grow and scale their business. So this question comes down to, if you could look back at your career thus far and pick or choose one or two things that you added to your business that took it from one spot to the next, what's that look like for you?
I think I always try to make sure, and I think this kind of encompasses the whole thing, I try to make sure that there's more personal touch than business touch. Even though we're dealing with $5, $10, $20 million homes, we're dealing with millionaires, we're dealing with, crazy numbers, people still appreciate a phone call over a text. And like it's the minutia. People really, appreciate it. Hey, good morning, how's it going? Before we start talking business. So instead of being like, hey, where's the paperwork? I needed your proof of funds 2 weeks ago. It's like, hey, hope your vacation has been amazing. Hope you're back safe. Hope your family's happy. Where's the proof of funds? And I think it's the personal connection that I try to establish that kind of puts me one step above, because that is my skill set. My skill set is not in Excel. Like I don't know how to work Excel very well, right? My skill set is not, it's not, I don't have an MBA. I didn't graduate from college. I got my GED from high school. So while I feel like I'm very smart, I feel like my IQ is very high. I feel like my EQ is even higher, right? And I think that's where I double down. I don't hand out business cards, right? If you want to get in touch with me, like put your number in my phone, put my number in your phone, I'll call, I'll text you. We have really nice business cards at Net Seekers, but they're all sitting in my house. I don't use them. I hate them. So I really try to just capitalize on the EQ. I tell people all the time, like, you can't sell a house. Like it's impossible. A house is too expensive. Because when I think of selling something, I think of somebody walking in who doesn't want a particular thing, and then you convincing them to buy the particular thing. Right. So to me, you can't sell a house. What you can do is sell yourself as the best possible vehicle for that person to get from where they are to where they want to be. Beautiful. Right? So I don't sell houses. I sell EQ. I sell relationships. I sell a pathway to your end goal.
Right. I mean, and to me, breaking it down for everybody who's watching or listening to this, I mean, that rings so true to so many of the top producers in any industry, in any field, any entrepreneur. It's about the people. It's about the relationship and being genuine in nature and really trying to connect. The business portion, it's going to come through, right? You have to walk the talk, but at the end of the day, we work with who we know, like, and trust. And I love the fact that you're looking at it from back to the basics standpoint, but the true pros never leave the basics. So I love that. You hit it real good, Andrew. I mean, that was awesome for sure.
Yeah. You just add on, you have these core things. It's like basketball, the fundamentals, you know how to dribble, you know how to pass, you know how to shoot. And then you add on the Euro stat.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, this is great. And this is huge takeaways for everybody. I mean, again, so not just necessarily looking at the next shiny bell or, the next latest and greatest, like, just be there, be present, be with the people, pay attention to them. I love that message. And it's not, to me, it's not spoken enough. I mean, people think it's common sense, but I guess it's not that common. But yeah, I think that's awesome.
I think I've gotten my biggest deals by making sure that the people around and the things around the people who are responsible for making the deal happen, making sure I connect with those. So like if you're selling a property and you're bringing your wife to help negotiate the price, I know that she's super important to you. So I'm going to make sure I connect with her. If you bring your daughter, you bring your son, if you bring your dog, like, I'm going to make sure that we connect. If you have sports cap on, we're going to talk about sports. If you have Porsche keys, we're going to talk about cars. Like, whatever you have going on that's outside of this deal, that's where we're going to connect, and then we're going to get to the deal.
Wow. But that's directly being a human, and it's really taking the robotic nature out of the business and the transaction, right? And I love that. I mean, I personally can't hear that enough. And I know there's so many other producers that are like shaking their heads, listening or watching this, like, yes, Andrew, he's got it, and then some. So tons of takeaways. I mean, I know we could go on and on about different takeaways and things how to grow and scale. Hopefully it's okay. I throw you under the bus a little bit, Andrew, but DM this man, reach out. I mean, he's a wealth of knowledge, just a true pro. So hopefully that's okay. I mean, I'm sure you get a lot, but
no, it's one of my favorite things to do. 50%, 60% of my team are all brand new agents, and I do that on purpose because when I was a brand new agent, I wanted and needed mentorship and didn't have it. So I like doing that. So you're all good.
Killer. Love it. Okay. You heard it, everybody. Andrew said it. I want to move on and shift gears. Now, this is the tricky part of this particular series and interview.
All right.
The challenge question. So I always lead into it with the Titans this way, that we all have challenges in our lives. No one's exempt, right? Whether it's in the past, now we're dealing with challenges, or in the future. We all have struggle, whether it's personal or professional challenges that we deal with. But I'm a firm believer it's not so much what happens, but how we respond, what we learn from, and I guess what we can share, because we're all people. We all have these things that we deal with. Andrew, whatever you're comfortable sharing, whether it's a personal challenge or a business challenge or whatever that you overcame, that you became stronger because of it, what's that look like for you?
Yeah, I think there's always something, but I think when I think back on my life, I think the biggest things have been homelessness. I think they've been, kind of the foster care upbringing. But while I was going through it, they didn't feel like challenges because a challenge can be lost, right? Like you can lose a challenge, but in my eyes, like losing was not an option. Like I couldn't stay in that place, right? So they didn't feel like challenges. They felt like, boom, I hit a wall. Now I need to figure out how to bounce off the wall and get to where I want to be. But looking back, I can see like, well, damn, you were sleeping in your car in Malibu. You should.
Wow.
that was tough, right? But when I was sleeping in my car in Malibu, I was like, oh, this won't be for long. Like I'm gonna figure this shit out. I'm gonna figure this stuff out, and
You're
I'm
good.
Okay, great. And I'm gonna get to where I want to be. And so I think that's super tough. I think adding somebody that you love to the mix changed my life in the way that I wasn't expecting. I expected to gain a wife and gain a partner and gain, some strength. I did, but I never expected that fear to be intensified. Like the fear I spoke about earlier about failing. Before it was just me. Like if I need to eat a couple noodles and like a hot dog and like a 7-Eleven slice of pizza and get through the week on $20, like I can do it.
Right.
But I don't want to put her through it. So that was a very like the night before the wedding. That was like my oh snap moment. I was like, you know what I do for a living? You know these checks are not promised, right?
Right.
And so she's a trooper, man. She's great. So those are probably the biggest challenges I have. Maybe I can also throw in figuring out how to couple all my different passions. Because while I love real estate, I really have a passion for the arts. I toured with Jill Scott. I have an NAACP Image Award. I won a Tony Award on Broadway. Like I've done a lot of the arts, and I'll never stop loving the arts. So kind of explaining to people that I can do both and then I can be both, and it doesn't kind of diminish one or the other. That's always interesting.
I love that though, because you're talking about balance of life and passion, and we can have multiple passions in our lives. And I don't think it deteriorates one thing over the next. I think it makes us more diverse. I think it makes us more of dynamic individuals instead of just so one-dimensional, right?
And that's a recent kind of realization. I think previously it wasn't that way. I think this is like the era of like Donald Glover and Childish Gambino, where he can be an actor, a rapper, a director, a writer. He can be all these things.
Right.
People accept it. But 10 years ago, it was like, no, if you're an actor, you act. Like that's what you do. If you're a businessman, you do business. That's what you do. If I catch you in the park, like playing your guitar, then I'm going to think you don't know what you're talking about on Monday. And it's like, what? So I'm glad we're not there anymore. But some people still have that kind of old school way of viewing things.
I think it's sad. It's that stay in your lane sort of mentality. And a lot of the entrepreneurs and business professionals that I've been blessed in my life to just have experience with, they say, forget that stay in your own lane sort of scenario with everybody else. Is build your own, right? Just build
Oh,
your
sure.
own and do
Oh,
what
yeah.
you want to do, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and that aspect even throws over into being like African American and being in a business where most of the people who are selling multi-million-dollar homes in Beverly Hills are white men.
Sure.
And so when you see somebody of color, when you see a woman and you see them thriving in these lanes, like it's not all, everybody's not always good with it. So you
Sure.
have to be not only on your game, but you have to understand that everybody's not going to love it and support it. And you have to keep on trucking whether or not people are like on your team or not on your team. And that I've always been able to do. But it's been interesting because I look around to see who else is in this business who looks like me, and they're all on my show. Like they're all on my TV show. Like that's it. Like, that's it.
It's
There might
pretty
be like
awesome.
5 or 6 more rolling around. But no, that's why the show is great. That's why the show is amazing. So.
I mean, I think that you hit such a beautiful note is light attracts light. And I think like-minded individuals and true professionals, they surround themselves with great people too. And that's what's so beautiful. And, you know, haters are always going to hate. There's always going to be naysayers and negative people. Leave them alone. Let them hang out together, right? I mean, that's just life. So you do what you can.
Yeah, on their own.
Yeah, that's it, Andrew. You hit it right on the head, man. But seriously, though, thank you so much for sharing that. It's not easy to air your stuff out in front of everybody, but I mean, it really, really just shows that we're all people. And, you know, no matter what happens, to me, what's really inspiring from you and your story, I mean, amongst so many things, Andrew, is your mindset. You just keep positive, you keep moving forward, and your work ethic and drive and just pushing it to another level. And again, it's just, in my opinion, so many reasons why you're on the show and other ventures that you've accomplished and so many different things that we probably haven't even listed yet. But yeah, it's just amazing, man. It's an honor. But I want to move on to the next particular portion. I'll go to a softer question here. This ends up being one of my favorites. It's the travel back in time. So if you could travel back in time, and this is any age range, any time frame of your life, and give your younger self a piece of advice or two. Anything you want to say, whether it's personal, professional, if it's funny, what would you say to young Andrew?
I would tell him there's no such thing as late. Like there's no time limit. And I don't mean like to an appointment. I mean in your life stage, right? So where you are in life, you're not late. That was something I struggled with a lot. And then I would also tell him that no matter what it looks like here, it's going to be okay. Please don't confuse circumstances with truth.
Okay.
Right. So your circumstances may look like I'm homeless, I sleep in my car, or whatever. But the truth is, I'm an amazing businessman. I'm smart. I'm innovative. I'm going to find a way out. Both of those things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. So please don't confuse circumstances with truth, and please don't think that you are late. I spent maybe 12 to 16 months studying all the different people who made dramatic life and career changes after the age of 35.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like Vera Wang, Samuel L. Jackson, all these people decided, Christy Alley, all these people decided to do what they're doing, what they're famous for in their 40s, 38, 45. And so when I was 28 and I was freaking out because I felt like I hadn't figured it out, I was like, you're not late. There's no such thing as like, calm down, you'll be okay. And I think a lot of people go through that. And so I would tell that to them too.
I love that you mentioned that, Andrew. And again, that's so for a lot of people that consume this type of content and a lot of top producers or professionals in any business, I think we all push ourselves to be 10 steps ahead of where we are, no matter how far ahead we are. And I think that message is, again, don't rush it, appreciate where you're at and appreciate that journey. But having, again, that positive mindset, you literally said, hey, I'm not this guy that's homeless right now. I'm moving forward. I'm pushing. I'm intelligent. I'm an innovator. I'm a businessman. Like all that stuff is not just naturally in there. That's work. That's a mindset that you've really forged and grown. And you have to put effort into those things. And I think but that's a huge message for not just young Andrew, but everybody who's watching or listening, myself included. And I think really not necessarily being becoming what you are in your circumstance. You can always change. It's never too late. I mean, you mentioned a bunch of actors. I think Morgan Freeman's another one who I think, what was it, Shawshank Redemption or something like that? And he was in his mid 40s or late 40s, and then he just skyrocketed.
And you know, you go to Samuel L. Jackson, and I think he was in Coming to America when he was probably like 36 or 37. He had like one scene in there, and that was the first time you knew who he was. But I mean, now the guys, I think he might have just turned 70. He's the highest grossing box office actor like to date. So yeah, please don't think that you're late. There's no such thing. The list goes on and on.
No, that's great. I mean, we don't want to give too much away, but this is really, really good, Andrew. I mean, seriously, so many good takeaways, really usable information. I love this. I want to shift gears. This is another crowd pleaser for the particular series, and we're almost wrapped up here, but this one ends up being the feeding of the mind question. So a lot of viewers, whether they're watching or tuning in, they want to know what the Titans are feeding their minds, how they're growing with books you're reading or read, podcasts you're listening to or listen to, anything along the lines of influencers, coaches, mentors. How are you feeding your mind? How are you growing?
Yeah. So I like to make sure I'm consuming things from a wide variety of spectrums, because while I work in the business world, I often deal with the celebrity and the entertainment world. So I like to read Ta-Nehisi Coates is one of my favorite authors. His books are really amazing. I listen to a podcast called At Scale. It's about the inner workings of startups. I like to read a lot of autobiographies because I feel like the best information out there is how somebody else did it, right? How somebody else took their situation and changed it into you know, where they've become. So I just read Tiffany Haddish's book. I just read Charlemagne the God's book. And so I like to catch up on people's journey. And I like to see the behind the scenes. That's why I think the podcast At Scale is so great, because they don't talk about just the success story. They talk about how the company almost failed and, you know, when they almost went bankrupt and how they got out of that. And I think those are the things that make anything work. Marriages, relationships, businesses, not the days that are great, days that are shitty. Like those are the ones. Yeah.
100%. And those are the days that make us or break us one way or the other. But I love the diversity of your knowledge and your basis from audio to, you know, looking at it from a book in that form or fashion from so many different perspectives. And I think that makes us more well-rounded. Obviously you're eat, sleeping and breathing real estate, and you know your markets and that end, but I think there's more to it. Again, and I think that's a big takeaway for everybody out there who's consuming information and following. But I do want to mention a few things in here, Andrew, for the audience out there. So I know there's some big news coming into 2020 with a book and a tour. Would you mind just sharing a little bit on that?
Yeah. So I started writing. I wrote a book of poetry years ago because I was a spoken word artist, and we did it on Broadway. We did it on television. And so I'm re-releasing that book, and I'm adding in bits of autobiography stories in between the chapters. And so we're going to take that on the road while also doing a public speaking tour. So I want to give, you know, young people motivation, old people motivation, people who have dreams. I want to just have conversations like this where I can share a little bit of what I know and maybe even learn some things from what you guys know. And also give you something to take home with you. So I'll have the book. We have a couple cities lined up, but until we get it locked in, I can't really say, but I'll post it all on my Instagram page as soon as it's done. And I'm also going to be doing a talk show. So I do a show on my Instagram. I do a show on my Instagram every Friday. It's called Brewski with Drewski. I literally have a beer with the audience and we talk about whatever people want to talk about. We talk about real estate, we talk about current events, we talk about whatever's going on.
Love it.
And it's gotten so popular that I got a phone call that said, hey, would you want to do this in front of a live studio audience, possibly shop it to network? Absolutely. I would 100%. So we're in pre-production now. If you're in the Southern California area, or if you're going to be, keep a lookout, because it's going to be free for the studio audience. And then sometime in 2020, probably more towards the middle, you'll see it popping up. I'll start telling you where you can find it online and things like that.
Love it. And so for the audience out there in the Titan Nation, we're going to have links in the comments down below. Anything that Andrew puts out, we'll share with everybody. That way you can follow along. And again, really just enjoy this man's knowledge and story and expertise. I mean, there's so much here, Andrew. It's incredible. I mean, it's been amazing. So many takeaways, so much usable information, and just feeling your warm energy and positive information out there in the community. I mean, it's been amazing. I want to wrap everything up with a final question. For everybody out here. And this ends up being a quote or mantra that you might live by that sums you up as a man, as a professional. What's that look like for you, Andrew?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. If I had to think of one thing that probably keeps me going, probably keeps me focused, is it's not as bad as it seems. It's always a lot better.
Wow.
Like I said, I think everybody can handle the good days just fine. But it's those days when you get frustrated. And sometimes when you start dwelling on the negativity, you start losing sleep and it becomes this huge monstrous thing. When in reality, you've just built it up to be that thing. It's not that big. It's not that bad. As a matter of fact, it's probably a lot better. It's probably a lot better than you think it is. So it's not that bad. It's probably a lot better.
Wow, that's huge. I mean, again, that just rings all the positivity and mindset motivation throughout this whole thing. Andrew, I am so honored as always. Really, thank you so much. You are an official real estate titan, my friend. So thank you so much. Yes. But everybody out there, as always, thank you so much for your love and support, your time and attention. If you like what we're doing here with Real Estate Titans, please don't forget to like the Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and have a listen on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Live every Tuesday and Friday afternoon. A different Titan, a different location. We'll catch everybody in the next live episode of Real Estate Titans. Take care.